Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Triple B Experience podcast. I'm Gary D. This man right here is Caleb Thomas, a.k.a. Cable. And last
What's up,
but certainly
everybody?
not least, we have everybody back together again. We got Mr. Triple B himself.
Hey, everybody! It's like the fabulous Freebirds reunited.
That's right.
Reunited, and it feels so good.
I like the duo there. Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. So
Made it up on the spot.
It's perfect. The tripod isn't limp anymore. So
Nope.
we're straight into the narrow. We're not hanging to the left or the right. So
Nope.
No more Eileen.
Come on, Eileen.
What was this, Bob?
That's straight.
Sturdy.
On my side,
Sturdy.
Sturdy and straight on my side, man.
No, but we're glad to have everybody back.
I am so happy. I'm so happy.
We have a hell of a show. This interview that we're gonna do with Max, aka the Gavel, David Lawless, indie wrestling superstar and DC enthusiast.
That's going to be a little hard because this is the house that Marvel built.
I like the way you said that, Bubba. That's perfect.
So, well, this is a different side, ladies and gentlemen, in the Triple B world. We're going to see, and I probably believe he's bringing everything he knows about Batman to the forefront here.
Yeah,
well, hopefully he doesn't hold my backdrop against me, but we'll see.
Max is a good friend of mine. We've mutual friends. We met through them. Have a lot of same interest in music. Obviously, we have that wrestling connection as well. So we had a lot to talk about. When we see each other, which is always a good time. But the day after I got back from seeing Batman, the next morning, he was the first person I text besides you guys. Hey, I know he's a big DC mark, so what was your thoughts on the new Batman?
It's good to get that. You got to go to him first, I'm sure, because if he loves Batman as you say he does, that would be the person I would go to.
So I texted him, and he gave me a response, and I didn't know how he would like it. Actually, it's kind of a mix. You either love it or you don't. I feel, in a lot of ways,
I'm sure he didn't see the movie at the Indiana movie theater like I did, which is crap.
That's true. We don't recommend that.
Please don't.
Unless they want to sponsor this podcast.
Sure, if they sponsor it, I'll watch every movie known to mankind.
That, and if, even if the popcorn tastes like paint, we'll still...
Paint and plastic. Paint and plastic.
It's
it's a deadly combination, man.
That's right. But, no, I was curious of his thoughts, and he gave me one. I said, you know what? Maybe we should just have him on the podcast. So I extended the invite, and he's somebody that, was on our radar when we first started, when I first started helping you.
I'm very curious because you two love the movie, me not so much. So maybe I got to see his point of view. Yeah. This is going to be something, ladies and gentlemen. You want to stick around.
No, it'll be good. We're going to bring me here for a second, but I just want to say it again, as I always do. We're not just another podcast. We are an experience. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. If not, welcome back. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you tuning in. But gentlemen, let's get into it because we've got shit to say
all the time.
Yeah,
all right,
buddy.
We're going to bring in Max. Hey, Max, what's going on, man?
Hi, Gary. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us on the Triple B Experience podcast. We are stoked to have you. You've been somebody on my radar for a while now, for a couple reasons. We have, the pro wrestling connection, of course, which we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yep.
But also, we want to talk about.
I like him because he's an attorney. Because I always need a good one. It's always good to have an attorney. Sometimes that you always need to use maybe the bat phone to call, and I would be honestly
we need the light with an M.
Yeah.
Right. So when it turns out there's not a lot of attorneys that are professional wrestlers, so exactly. I am the bat line for a lot of people in the industry. So.
Well, as much trouble as Bubba gets himself into, he might need to cash in a favor or two.
We'll just do that
off air, Bubba.
I will. I'll
Yeah,
tell you that.
but no, we're excited to have you. Obviously, like I said, wrestling, but to talk comic books and to be honest with you, Max, and we're gonna get into this, and I'll let you reply here after the icebreaker because I have an icebreaker for you.
Okay.
But you're talking to basically 3 Marvel guys, so I think it's going to be an interesting conversation, and we want to hear your take on all things DC.
Yeah.
Of course, we're going to talk about some wrestling, but we want to hear about Batman too, the new Batman movie, and your takes. So first, let's start with the icebreaker. I think we already know this, but if you could be one superhero, who would it be and why?
It would have to be Batman.
I figured.
But why?
The why is because he's the easiest superhero to identify with because he's human.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's the strongest man in the world. He's the most intelligent. He's the most athletic. What he can't do with superpowers because he doesn't have them, he makes up for with being the best human being in the world at doing it. And so I like the idea of having someone who has everything, makes a conscious decision to help people, makes a conscious decision to try to make the world a better place, and would be willing to put the world on his shoulders to do that.
That's a good answer.
That is a good answer.
That's a great answer.
I can't I don't have a rebuttal for that one right now.
You can't attest that, huh, Bubs?
What's funny is I have a lot of friends that are Marvel individuals as well, and I don't know what it is. I just don't connect with the Marvel characters as much.
Why do you say that though?
To me, the psychology behind the Marvel universe versus the DC universe was never as more refined, I guess, in my opinion. Okay.
No. That's
now, when I was growing up, one of my favorite Marvel characters is the Punisher. But again, you have a human character, so it's easy to identify with. Mm-hmm. When I was really getting into comic books, though, I think the Marvel presentation was a little campier than I was ready for. And so seeing Batman and looking at the psychological analysis of a character like Batman juxtaposed with the Joker, and then a character like Superman, to me, it was more intriguing. I gravitated towards it more. And I'm sure in the Marvel universe, the psychological exploration of the characters is just as deep. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Huh. So that's interesting. So let me ask you this, Max, is, where did it all start for you with comic books? Okay. Was it actually comic books? Was it movies? Was it cartoons? What drew you to, this form of pop culture?
I would say it was probably the Dark Knight trilogy series with Christopher Nolan, Christian Bale. I mean, I was always a fan of Batman growing up, saw all the movies, had the toys when I was younger. But I didn't really appreciate the stories behind the character probably until I got to college. And it was after seeing those movies that I really dove headfirst into the Batman universe and the DC universe. And then really engulfed myself when I took a philosophy of comics class.
So you were a late bloomer into Batman.
Yes. Well, I would say a late bloomer into comics in general.
Okay. So this wasn't a thing when you were a kid.
My cousin was kind of into comics. He was a big fan of Punisher and some of the early Marvel stuff. But I really didn't read comics. I was more focused on sports when I was growing up.
Okay. That's interesting.
But I took this philosophy of comics class, which was just it was just mind shattering. The first book we read was Watchmen.
Oh, wow.
To really dig into the psychology behind the characters and to understand the complexities of them, but then to understand that originally they were all based on the stable of DC characters. And then to go back and start digging in further, we read Watchmen, and one of the things we read was The Dark Knight Returns, because that was really what brought Batman back to the mainstream.
Yes, that's correct.
And so, one of the things we'll talk about when we talk about the Batman movie and why I think it's the best Batman movie that's done is because I feel like Batman has gotten away from his roots and I'm talking original roots as a character. And this film, in my opinion, is going to help bring back those roots to the general public.
Yeah, Cable and I talked about that a little bit last week. You know, and how much we liked it. You know, and we'll get that. Cable, do you have a question? I think real quick before we.
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay.
I was going to rip off something he said, but I forgot it.
Anyway, but no, so okay, that's interesting. So I think most of us, it's an interesting take because most of us have been fans of, you know, like comics and stuff as kids. So you actually started to come on, you know, mainly because of the movies, which is awesome.
Which is different. Different than myself, who did the books in the mid 70s to now, you know, and enjoyed all the movies and every superhero show known to mankind. So to me, that's why it's late. So due to the fact that you were older, so did you appreciate it more since you were older?
100%. 100%. I mean, you know, I liken it to, I became a professional wrestler at the age of 30. And some people would say that's old, given, you know, how our bodies will decompose as we age.
Yeah.
But, you know, truly, I don't think I would have had the success that I've had in wrestling if I would have started in my 20s, because I don't think I had the life experience and the emotional maturity to understand everything behind it. And so I feel like growing up, just the way my mind operated and the things that I was interested in, I don't know that I would have appreciated comics as deeply as I do now. And, you know, one of the things that's been really cool in this journey, especially as you're older, is going back and studying the history of comics in general. And I have a fantastic book that was put out by Yowie Press, and it's called We Spoke Out. And it studies how in the 60s and 70s, comics were being used as a form of education for the youth about the Holocaust and World War II, because it wasn't really widely taught in schools. And you look at some of the early like X-Men characters and even just some, you know, short runs of comics that were appearing in magazines. They were being used to introduce concepts of what was happening to the Jewish people in internment camps. And so to see how comics have, you know, had an influence on pop culture, education, philosophy, politics, and just see, you know, how they can explain these ideas to individuals in a subtle way, in an entertaining way. It's just fascinating to me. So I wouldn't have had this intellectual appreciation for comic books if I would have gotten into it when I was younger, the way that I do now.
Right. Because, I mean, if you look back through the history, comics are so steeped in everything.
Yes.
Every facet, you know. I mean, Iron Man doesn't become a song if Ozzy Osbourne doesn't like the Iron Man comics. There's so many different instances. And like you mentioned, the X-Men are such a good allegory for so many different people that have suffered through the years, you know, and it's not right at face value, but if you're intelligent enough, it's all right there.
Yeah. And that's when you have an intellectual conversation with someone about the psychology of comics, I've found 9 times out of 10 that, you know, it's easy to look at, you know, all the figures behind me or the tattoos on my arm and think, oh, you know, it's just a geeky hobby. But the truth is there's a lot of psychological implications associated with just, you take Batman and Superman, right? And I don't like Superman because I don't identify with him, but the juxtaposition is, here's a human being who wakes up every day that chooses to go out into the world and put himself in harm's way for the greater good of society, versus Superman, who battles with this idea of he didn't choose this life. And what do you do with that power that you have? It's phenomenal when you boil it down.
That is something I definitely don't think about with, you know, comics or, you know, superheroes in general. But no, that's amazing take on that. Wow.
Well, now that's how they're doing a lot of the shows. Now it's a different way of the superheroes. Now they're getting to be grittier and doing some diabolical stuff that the morals are starting to collapse these new shows. And it's the different side of superheroes, which I never seen growing up, and until recently, now it's a different turn. So,
well, and I mean, if you look at the major facets of pop culture throughout time, right? The popular forms of entertainment seem to flow with the movements in society.
Yep.
Okay. And so, if we can talk about professional wrestling for just a second, one of the reasons why I don't think professional wrestling is connecting with enough people as it once did is because, you take it through the decades, right? Let's go back to the 70s and the 80s with Hulk Hogan.
Mhm.
You had a very patriotic, America first, say your
blue
prayers,
collar, blue collar.
take your vitamins, morality,
Yep.
type of uplifting message, which people gravitated towards. The 90s and the early 2000s, you had this counterculture of Stone Cold Steve Austin and rebelling against the system.
Mm-hmm.
And then take that even into the late 2000s, into 2010 and early 2012 to 13 with Daniel Bryan, right? Now it's an undersized person who was never told he was good enough that says, screw that. I can do this if I work hard enough and if I fight hard enough. And so where we are as a society now, that messaging is kind of lost because we don't necessarily have that one strong social issue or societal issue that is palatable to everyone. I mean, there are issues that we're dealing with as a society, but they're so divisive that if you go one way or the other, you're going to ostracize half the country. So, with comics, it's a natural progression of the story. I mean, you look at DC's catalog, 75% of the books center around Batman and the Batman world. And Superman's pretty much a secondary character, despite the fact that Superman built DC Comics and the whole Action Comics run. Why is that? Well, because people want to start questioning the things in our society that we can question. They don't just want to take things at face value. And Superman, you do have to give up a lot of your reality, thinking, here's a person from a different world that could do anything he wants, but you can't really identify with that.
Yeah, and you got a pair of glasses and it can change his identity because he moves his, you know what I mean? Like that doesn't make, it never made any sense to me anyway. Like he always pawned that off and he always thought he was better than everybody else in the DC universe, of course, because he's Superman.
Right.
But I mean, when Batman did the kryptonite suit and showed him how it was, I mean, that was the tide that turned, the Dark Knight in my eyes.
And I mean, when you have human characters, it's way easier to connect with audiences and individuals than it is with, superheroes or fantastical stories. I mean, most of the fantasy stories that you read always have underpinnings of society. I mean, I don't know if you all like The Witcher, but The Witcher has a lot of political ramifications associated with it and religious undertones in it. Same thing with Lord of the Rings. I mean, these are stories that have shaped our society and our culture. It's just how much can the audience connect with it and how deep are they willing to dive?
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good take because, as kids, you're watching superheroes, you're watching comic books, you're watching reading comic books, watching cartoons, and you don't get it. You don't get the true meaning behind it, but it's deeper than what you think as a kid. Like he loves Spider-Man, but does he really get the meaning behind Spider-Man? No, he's just a cool guy in a blue and red or blue or in red and black costume, and he's swinging like a spider from building to building, fighting bad guys and crime. To where, as I got older, I started to appreciate comics a little bit more for their backstory. And Cable and I talked about this last week as well, that with Batman, hands down, has some of the best villains you could possibly get in, comics.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the list of villains that's there. You got, Two-Face, you got the Joker, Penguin,
his
Harley
rogue
Quinn,
villains,
the Freeze, Killer Croc.
Yes, some of the best ever between Batman and Spider-Man has a lot of really good ones as well.
They're probably they're like this in my eyes. They're probably very, very close.
I tend to tip it towards Batman, but there's a darkness and a mystique that revolves around Batman that's just so intriguing. So I completely get that.
Yeah, there's a good. Go ahead.
No, I think one of the things that's interesting though is like there's a simplicity to comics and this type of entertainment that's never going to change, right? At the end of the day, you could always just look at it for face value like your son does and say, cool costume, swinging around like a spider.
Good versus evil.
That is really what entertainment should be. Easily digestible by the masses, but more intricate if you dive into it. I mean, professional wrestling's the same way.
Yep.
You give people a digestible story, it's easy to understand. They're going to come along for the ride. How deep they go, that's up to them. But I mean, if you tell a story, people will at least be entertained.
Yeah.
And perfect microcosm of what you just said, since perfect episode for this, Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, yeah.
That is a work of art. I mean, it won an Emmy. It's got stories. There's episodes where he doesn't even put the bat suit on sometimes. It's got well thought out, well written stories. But at the same time, when I was a kid, I loved it and I didn't care what it was about. I saw Batman.
That is probably the best animated series of cartoon superhero probably of all time in my eyes. Like I agree with all three of you on that. That is the Batman animated series is top notch.
Yeah.
And it holds the test of time.
For sure.
Well, and you know what's really funny is if you think about it psychologically also, because I was a psychology minor in college. So you're really I'm really going back when I think about this. But there was and philosophy also. I'm sorry, I was a philosophy minor. There was a philosopher by the name of Jeremy Bentham who studied the prison system, right? And so there was the creation of a prison called the Panopticon, which was a circular prison that had a tower in the center. And the tower was just high enough where the inmates could see the tower, but couldn't actually see if someone was inside of it. So psychologically, what was happening was the inmates always thought someone was watching them, even though you didn't really need to have anyone there. That is kind of what Batman is trying to do in Gotham by having the bat signal. And you saw that right at the beginning of Batman, when the signal's in the air and everyone's, cowering. Yep. So, and then that goes to the bigger question of morality, which is, what is right and wrong? Is doing the right thing only when someone's watching? Is that being moral? Or is it doing the right thing all the time, even if you don't have that fear, that sword of Damocles hanging over your head?
Wow.
Yeah, that's questions that you don't get. And a lot, and like I completely understand where you're coming from. Earlier when you said, it's just my opinion, but you said that about DC. Marvel, especially for a long time, Marvel seems a little fluffy. Seems, doesn't have as much darkness to it, and that changed over the years too. But the psychological bend that Batman has, I watched a documentary one time, and there was a psychiatrist on there that said the only reason she even became a psychiatrist was because the episode of Batman the Animated Series when Two-Face wakes up after his attack. And like she owed her whole career to seeing that episode as a kid, and it lasted, and imprinted on her at such an early age.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at some of Batman's biggest rogues, right? And they have their foundations in psychological diagnoses, right? You remember, I just watched the episode from the animated series with Scarface, right? So there's a person that has two separate personalities that is using a, ventriloquist dummy to play out this sadistic fantasy that he has. Yeah. Two-Face, arguably a bipolar character. Harley Quinn, Joker, schizophrenic. I mean, and there's a concept known as Takasubos, which is, broken heart disorder, which, they typically diagnose in older individuals who lose a loved one late in life. But you could even argue that someone like Mr. Freeze is suffering from a Takasubo by trying to keep his wife alive. And then, you look at someone like Hush, who is this just, psychopath from the time that he's young. And he uses his parents' death as this excuse for why he acts the way that he does. But the truth is he set his parents up to die anyway. So, is it nature versus nurture, right? Are you born this way or do you develop into this character?
Yeah. And having that Hush character, which is obviously why they brought him into the Batman world, but that's a perfect foil for Bruce Wayne versus him. And, where they took their lives after the death of their parents.
Right. And I mean, one of the reasons why this Batman was so great was because of the fact that, it went back and introduced some of the first villains in Batman's history, which was the Mafia, the Maronis and the Falcones.
Yeah, it was.
Bubba,
Okay.
you have a question real quick.
Well,
then we're gonna stream into the actual.
It was just the rogue villains, Dave. The rogue villains of Batman are more sinister than the rogue villains of Spider-Man in my eyes. Because when you got Harvey Dent is, the district attorney, and then all of a sudden he has that, and he turns, and you don't see that in any type of comic character where actually a good guy. He was a good guy, and now he is one of the most diabolical foes of Batman. So that whole turn, I don't see that in Marvel. Maybe not offhand that I can think of right now, but that character of Two-Face is probably the biggest one that was a face, and he turned into a major heel.
Yep.
And he stayed that his whole course. He's never he never went back. Maybe in a storyline, maybe he had a change of heart, but he always stayed a heel. And that to me is something that Batman's villains are more sadistic than the rogues of Spider-Man villains. They're a little bit more colorful, and there's a lot of dark and dreary and sadistic ways of the DC villains of Batman.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing I'll say about DC and why they, in my eyes, are better than Marvel, but I know we can debate this. I see everyone going crazy about this Marvel What If, right? Oh, these action figures are out and everything. Dude, DC's been doing that for years with the multiverse. And you look at the Dark Knight's Metal series, like, first of all, I will say, as cool as Batman is, and as much as I love him, if Frank Castle stood across from Batman, he'd probably kill him. Because no one's more badass than Frank Castle. But the Grim Knight was like an homage to the Punisher in DC's world as the Batman. And that character was, what if Batman lived on another universe, and when he was a kid, Joe Chill's gun fell to his feet, and he picked it up and shot him. And then he just became this badass mercenary like the Punisher for the rest of his life. It's awesome.
Wow. So Max, another question about DC real quick. If out of all the villains to choose from within the DC universe, and there's a lot of good ones, who's your favorite there?
Oh, man. Well, I'm going to give you two answers because one's kind of a hybrid villain, good guy. So hands down, probably the number one villain would be Joker.
Okay.
But probably second in line, why I say villain into hero, is Red Hood. Because, Red Hood, little bit of interesting nuggets here about Red Hood. So first of all, Red Hood was a character that was developed by Judd Winnick, who, I don't know if you guys were fans of the Real World at all, but Real World San Francisco, that's the Judd Winnick that is a comic book writer.
Okay.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Red Hood is Jason Todd, right? Who was despised by DC fans. A Death in the Family was based on, it was a 4-issue run.
Right.
At the end of the third issue, they created a 900 number where the fans could call to say whether they wanted to see Jason Todd die.
That was huge too. That was huge back then, because I remember that. I didn't call, but it was huge. It was very huge.
Overwhelmingly, people said kill him.
That's terrible.
So, Red Hood was brought back to life by Ra's al Ghul in the Lazarus Pit, which, you have to suspend disbelief a little bit there. But comes back to Gotham and becomes a foil to Batman because he's killing drug dealers. He's killing villains like Black Mask. And ultimately, he wants to kill the Joker. And Batman has to step in, and you have this great question of morality where if you could go back in time and kill the person that killed you, would you do it? Right? Are you better than that person if you do that? Are you on equal footing? Are you a good guy or are you a bad guy? Great morality questions there.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's deep. I mean, that's extremely deep. And maybe, judging from this conversation, and I think we all kind of knew this, but with DC, I think they tend to be a little more deep, a little more dark, and they kind of question your stability in some, sense in a lot of ways. But, to me, I think I always just was attracted to Marvel is because they connect their universe better. Like it seems like they're able to do that
because
it's a constant reboot.
Because it's in the real world, Mav. Marvel is in the real world, where DC is in cities where no offense, they're make believe. I mean, you know what I mean? Just in the storylines, like New York City.
Fictional cities.
Yes. But but honestly, with the Batman, speaking of the Red Hood, like Batman had dad issues, and his the guys he had, the Robin, and he treated him like crap. That's what I mean. His issue, that's a negative issue in how he treated all his sidekicks to me, and that's the negative that I see in everything that Batman's ever did. He just.
Well, it's a character flaw, and that's realistic.
Which could go back to the psychology of the way,
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, because he's human at the end of the day. He's not
perfect. But he still treats. It's still like there's not. I know there's not a lot of love in his heart, but he didn't show a little bit of love where he could have to help those guys, to give them encouragement that he needed.
Yes,
that's the negative thing that I see in Batman. And to me, like the strongest Batman that I've been watching is the Batman on Teen Titans. That guy who plays Batman, that character is very, very good. And it's, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure, David, you've seen that show.
Oh yeah. Many times.
And I think that Batman character is good, the way he plays it. And he shows his younger guys that he had how to do stuff in life.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things I'll say, Bubba, to your point, is what DC did so well for so long with the characters being grounded in reality was almost their undoing, and what kind of led to the criticism that they've received. To Gary's point about the universe is not linking up, DC was really on the downward trend until they did Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was the first time they had ever really done a massive crossover event where, superheroes were being killed. And part of the reason why they had to do that was just because they were running out of story arcs for these characters, because there was only so much you could do with, reality-based villains, right? So many different scenarios you could put them in. So, DC has maybe gone a little overboard since 85 on these Crisis. I mean, I just got Flashpoint, and I got, the Blackest Night, which was just basically crisis type events, just with a different central character around it, either Batman or Superman or the Flash or the Green Lantern. But the point is, they're starting to do a better job at DC of tying some of these universes together, but they rushed, in my opinion, to try to catch up to Marvel. And the Justice League movie, like the original cut, was a prime example of how you cannot rush something like that. I mean, Marvel had over a decade head start to develop these characters, and really to put actors in those roles, not only that people loved, but people connected with. I mean, could you think of a better person or human being to play Iron Man than
no?
That is Robert Downey Jr. Yep. I mean, first of all, Iron Man is essentially a redemption story, right? A guy who is, creating weapons of mass destruction that gets taken captive by the enemy and is on death's door, and now survives and has to help the world.
Yep.
And then you've got Robert Downey Jr., who was near death based on his addiction, comes back and is one of the best actors in the world.
Yeah. And he wasn't even the pick for that movie, right?
No.
So you definitely couldn't find anybody better for that.
Iron Man at that time, nobody collected Iron Man comics because Iron Man was a secondary character at that time.
Right. So DC's done a good job of focusing on their stable talent. And what you're seeing now is, these secondary characters. You have people like James Gunn who are saying, you know what, forget everything that's happened up to now. We're just going to go in the complete opposite direction and go over the top with violence and humor. And it works because it's fun.
Yeah. Speaking of which, did you watch Peacemaker?
Loved it. Every second.
It was amazing. I enjoyed that so much. I look forward to it every week. I'd get up early to watch it.
Every Thursday. It was great. Yep. There was a little tear in my eye when I woke up one Thursday. Before I go to the gym, I stretch, and I would always watch Peacemaker before I go.
Yeah, and it just, that's my only peace in the morning, and I'd get up, I'd look forward to that. I'm like, oh, shit, it's over.
You could just go back and watch it again.
You could, yeah, and I'm looking forward to more.
Said, there's no wrong time to rock.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the intro alone, like I said, I usually skip those. I don't care.
Love
that.
It.
You have to watch that. It just sets it right up.
I'm a John Cena fan now, just due to the Peacemaker. Actually.
Dude, first of all, even if Cena wouldn't have been a professional wrestler and just would have been a human being, there's like no better individual to play Peacemaker.
Exactly. Yep.
Like no.
Yeah.
Yep. Played him to a T. It was
Yeah,
perfect.
let me ask you real quick, because I don't know what topics we're going to go to real quick.
We're going to go to the Batman here.
Okay, before we
after
get to
this
the
question.
Batman movie. Now, Batman, what arc of comic run storyline do you like the most?
That's a great question.
Offhand.
Wow.
Because I have the Batman comics from like 390 up to 4 something with the Lonely Place to Die of Tim Drake and all that stuff. I have that. I have the Death in the Family, and because some before that, Batman was just not, the stories weren't as good as they were at that time for me. And I do like Jim Lee's artwork; he's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I did get Detective, 1000. So I do have some in my collection. I don't want to say that I'm anti-Batman, which I'm
Bubs,
not.
you have, I don't know if you could see it, Max, but he has so many comics, it's unreal. So
Oh wow, look at that.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
I
can see all the long boxes.
and he wears gloves, mind
Yeah,
you, while he touches them, and they're in sleeves.
Well,
like,
yeah. I mean, if you're going to jam those up and get them insured, you better make sure you're.
Oh yeah, they're insured. They're definitely insured. But I mean, just in them runs, like some of the McFarlane iconic covers of Batman are very pricey and very nice.
Yep.
So
Hey.
I mean, your greatest run. Which,
I'll be the first one to say too that I like prospecting on comics also. So I have a couple number ones from Marvels in my collection that I haven't read just because I'm hoping one day they'll.
What are they? If you don't mind me asking, real quick, Mr. DC?
Well, one of them I got Hulk like 44 from the latest run because I watched the YouTube channel that said that something big was going to be happening there.
Okay.
When the Jim Rugg Hulk Grand Design comes out, which I don't know if you're up on that.
Yeah, I know.
He's actually doing a signing at my LCS on the 30th here in Shadyside. So if you want to make the trip down, Jim Rugg from
April
30th of March.
March. Oh, okay.
Yeah, because that's when Grand Design comes out. I've actually struck up a little bit of a relationship with Ed Piskor, who is actually brothers with Bobby Piskor, who's a ref at IWC.
Yep.
But he's doing a comic called Red Room, which if you haven't read Red Room, go out and
violent.
read it.
It's very ultra violent.
Oh, it's awesome. Woo. It's awesome. And I actually made the Gore Gallery in one of them because I created I did a Poker Face action figure custom that I gave him. But
wow,
my favorite Batman run is probably Hush.
Huh.
Okay.
Probably
Nice.
Hush because that was one of the. It's why I like the Long Halloween as well, because the reveal of who the villain wasn't predictable.
Okay.
It was someone that either was a new character or someone you just didn't see coming. I mean, I don't know if y'all have read the Long Halloween, but the killer in the Long Halloween turns out to be Harvey Dent's wife.
No, I never read that, but
I haven't either. But
there were many suspects that Batman looked for high and up and down, and Harvey Dent's wife was the one that was murdering all of the major crime bosses because all of their crimes were pulling her husband away from his family, and all she wanted to do was get her husband back and protect him.
Did you watch the animated movie?
Oh yeah.
Did you like it?
Loved it.
DC's animated films are
better than Marvel.
Hard to beat. Yeah.
Everyone I talk to says the same thing. I couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we say that week after week. Again, I think the three of us collectively we veer towards Marvel, but DC does have some pluses. But in my opinion, the Batman was one of them. I really enjoyed it. I text you the day after, Max, because I knew you're a big Mark, and I said I have to ask what did you think of the new Batman movie? And I didn't know what you would say. And you told me exactly what you said at the beginning of the podcast. It was the best one ever. So I'm intrigued. I'm like, okay, well, would you be interested in come on the podcast to talk about it? Cable and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Bubba, not so much. But
there was outside factors, Dave, that screwed my thought process of the movie. And I'm older than all you guys, and it was the fighting scenes I couldn't see. I like it.
Was
I know Gotham's dark, but just a little bit of sun would be great. Just
They had a sunrise at one point.
I mean, to me, there were so many things to love about this movie, just as a film, but then as a Batman story. First of all, the cinematography of the film, in my opinion, was just second to none. I mean, I remember that shot towards the end where he's holding the red flare up and leading the people through the water. The way that was lit and the way that that flare illuminated that, but like the darkness was behind them and he was leading them into the light. Just like, that's just a great like film shot.
Bubba, I don't think saw that part
or not.
I did see that part, but
Okay.
I did see it, Mav, but it just like where I was watching it, David, it just like, I'm going to watch it again in my house, and I'm sure my TV will take the scope and magnify it so much. And I'm going to have a different opinion, I'm sure. And I wanted to see it, and I wasn't upset. The guy from Twilight is Batman. I'm not upset, but I'm old school where I'm a Michael Keaton fan. Like, I love Michael Keaton as Batman. That's just me because I'm old.
And you know what? I tell people all the time, if Twitter and the internet would have existed when they were announcing who was starring as Batman in the 80s, people would have had the same reaction.
Yeah, there was an outcry. Everybody thought, who's this? Yes.
Batman?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a great point, man. That's great.
Bruce Willis had the same. There was the same reaction to Bruce Willis when Die Hard came out too. Because I mean, he was doing like Moonlighters or whatever.
Moonlighting.
Yeah. So, I will say, you know, I went and saw the first time I saw the movie was the Wednesday advance screening at the Dolby Theater in the Waterfront.
Okay.
So you're talking about the sharpest image, the biggest screen, and the best sound. I don't know that my opinion of the movie necessarily would have been changed if I would have seen it in a regular theater for the first viewing, because I did for the second. But I will say some of the parts of the movie that really like just blew me away didn't hit as hard in a regular movie theater. That first time that he revved the Batmobile,
Kate and I were talking about that. Yeah,
Dude,
last week. It was amazing. My seat was shaking. Like, and I was at more of a, I wouldn't say it's a luxury theater, but it's the seats that recline. It's nice and comfortable. And I'm sitting there just chilling. That he revs that thing up. I'm like, holy! I felt it.
And I'll be honest, I thought this was going to be my least favorite Batmobile out of all of them. Okay, dude, it's my favorite.
It's the best. Absolutely,
but it's the most. How do I guess I could say realistic. It's not as like overdone, right? It's a souped up muscle car. You know, in judging by the way that I felt the direction that this movie was going was like, they're fresh into this. Like, he's 2 years into being Batman, from my understanding. So his Batmobile is going to be a souped up muscle car. It's not going to be this overdone thing. So yeah, it was amazing. And for me, like, and I was telling them last week that when I got to the theater, because I went to see it by myself, kind of late at night. But sitting there, I was getting emotional in a way. Like, I was thinking like of all the Batmans I saw in theaters when I was a kid, you know, with my dad and stuff like that. And I'm just like, this is really cool. I'm excited to see Batman and again in theaters. And I don't want to go into something and be closed-minded and just hate it. Did I like the choice of Batman initially? Yeah, probably not. I preferred him with the mask on. I thought he did great with the mask. When he took off the mask, just the way they had him, like his mannerisms, I didn't necessarily love, but overall, great movie. And then nostalgia came back to me and hit me really hard. So, yeah, it was fantastic.
And I mean, as a Batman purist, I will say the reason why it's my favorite Batman, or the best Batman, is because it blended so many amazing elements of Batman past, Batman present. And there were so many parts of that movie that people who have gotten into Batman for different reasons or through different mediums could appreciate. So, for instance, first of all, as a whole, the movie offers everything.
Yeah. Murder
mystery, little bit of comedy, motorcycles, cars, beat 'em ups, you know, hot chicks, hot dudes. Like, there's a lot to be had there. Okay. Big epic disaster scenes, you know, close combat
set pieces,
mystery, intrigued. You had you know, the actual shots of the car chase scene, the motorcycle scene, the interior, the sets, they were just fantastic. But, you know, first of all, the fighting that Batman engaged in inside of the club. If you grew up playing the Arkham games, I mean, I could see the triangle button over top of the characters whenever they were coming up with the bat. I mean, you go back and watch that combat scene when he first goes into the Penguins club. That's literally taken out of an Arkham game with how he's moving between characters, how he takes the bat, how he hits someone else. I mean, I was like, wow, for people that grew up playing those Arkham games, they're going to see that. They're going to instantly be excited about that.
You know, that's something I didn't pick up because I didn't play the games, but
I didn't either.
Now that you mentioned that, I could see that. Yeah, I could.
Just go back and watch one fight sequence from one of those games on YouTube. You'll see exactly the way that Batman moves, the close-knit combat with the elbows and the hands. And then when someone comes from behind with a weapon, how he counters it and grabs the weapon. It was awesome. Well done. And I mean, even the way that they subtly nodded to the futures of the movie, like, for instance, this movie combined, I know there's like 3 major titles that DC's putting out as inspiration for the movie. So they're saying The Long Halloween, Ego, and I think the last one they put out was Batman Year One, right? As ways to get, to understand Batman. But this captured so many different things. Hush, Long Halloween, Dark Knight Rises, or Dark Knight Returns was in there. Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's run on the Court of Owls, and all of the way that Arkham, was developed throughout there. Had Arkham Asylum.
Do you think it was too much? Do you think it was too much in this? Okay. Do you think
Not
it's
at
just
all.
right? Just right?
If you want to go back and do a deep dive in there, you could figure out all the Easter eggs. And what's really cool is that rodalata.com, that's a real website. And if you go there and click on it, it actually downloads a zip file to your computer, and it's got all the Riddler's photographs, his journal. So if you really want to get engrossed in this world, like 360 degrees, you can. But, what was interesting was like that first card has an owl and a skeleton. And so the Court of Owls, their getup is the white mask and the owl. So you had that. The scene where Bruce Wayne is in the funeral, the way that little kid looks, the profile of that little kid, the mayor's son, looks exactly like Carrie Kelly from The Dark Knight Robin. Right?
Yeah.
If you remember, this is a version of Carrie Kelly. But if you look at the profile of that kid sitting in the funeral, looks almost like Carrie Kelly. There's nods to that. I think the Court of Owls stuff that they put in there is really going to be cool. And I think it's something people are really going to be able to sink their teeth into. You had Batman Earth 1 too. So after the Doomsday Clock crisis event, you had this new thinking of Batman on a different Earth where Thomas Wayne was running for mayor, where Alfred was brought in as Thomas Wayne's bodyguard. So this Andy Serkis portrayal of Alfred was kind of a blend of like old school Alfred in the fact that he's like this proper butler, but also, he says in that hospital scene, I taught you to fight, and it was kind of a throw into today's Batman, which, spoiler alert, Alfred's dead. Bane killed him.
I didn't know that. I honestly didn't. Because I don't collect and read Batman comics.
Yeah,
I would not know that. I mean, I do. I think I do have the first appearance of Bane in my comic collection, but I wouldn't know. But let me ask you another quick question, because the guys talked last week. Now that opening scene in the subway, to me, that was the Joker. The guys from The Dark Knight Returns, the Joker gang, I want to call them. But the one character, the kid who was real hesitant, was the Tim Drake from the Titans. Is that like something that was some kind of Easter egg or nothing to do with it, or what?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think because I don't know when they shot that versus when Titans was, because I think the movie got held up a little bit through the pandemic.
Okay.
But what was funny, Bubba, was I went back and I don't know if she would be credited, but I think one of the extras in the mayor's house that's taking the pictures of the crime scene, there's an Asian woman that's shown there, and she looks a lot like the police officer in Peacemaker.
Huh.
Oh, yeah. Okay. See, now I know I'm gonna watch this again.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if it was her.
Right.
but it looked damn close.
Wow. So do you think maybe they did something with everything and they're slowly trying to connect it with a needle and thread? Maybe.
Or it could
I
just
hope
be,
not.
you know, DC's like, wow, these people are great. Let's
Yeah.
I mean,
but that would be awesome.
Because they need something. They need something besides Batman just being that. They need a DC universe that everybody can enjoy and love.
But this isn't canon, right?
No.
Yeah, I disagree. Right. I agree with you. I think this should be its own thing.
Yep. And I think it's going to. I think Joker's going to have his own world from like the Joaquin Phoenix world. And Batman's going to have this. I mean, if you think about it, like the way that Marvel introduced those characters and started blending them together. I mean, Iron Man is a great standalone movie, but when it was first made, yes, there was a vision, but if that movie would have been terrible, they would have just canceled the MCU. I think DC has enough self-contained stories within their characters that they don't have to use that as a hook. And I think if there's any character that's going to kind of tie in the MCU, I think it's going to come in the Flash movie because they have Affleck and they have Keaton playing Batman in there. And so I think that's going to be a nod to the Flash having to run through the different multiverses.
Speaking of that, I just watched a rumor mill stuff because I watch a lot of that stuff. I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, let me take my earbuds out.
Okay. But Doc Strange has, since they filmed that, since James Gunn filmed the Peacemaker ending on a Marvel set, that the Flash could be seen in the Doc Strange 2 movie. It's just a little bit, just to do something like that, like two ships passing in the night.
Yeah.
And then if the DC stuff later on, they could do the same thing, like nods and like, you know, because they're all friends, they all hang out. They're like different rival wrestling promotions, but they all drink beer and hang out and stuff.
How much of a pop would you get with that? I mean, come on, Cable. I go to the movies with you a lot, you know, and we go to the big movies.
I don't know how true that is, but I just heard that the other day.
No, I mean, look, go back to the 90s. Marvel and DC did crossovers.
Yeah.
You know,
they've done a few.
But they always would be like a tie. Like one would win, the other would win.
Well, yeah, because nobody wanted to do the job.
Yeah, like the NWA back in the day.
Right. But also, too, when they did the crossovers in the 70s of the comic book with your man, Batman, and my man, the Hulk, and then I can't see Batman beating the Hulk, but in that storyline in the comic trade paperback, it kind of sucks, but
Batman was more over than
he was in
Ninja Turtles. He was in Scooby Doo.
Yeah,
the guy was everywhere.
Yeah,
and he literally, it's like, as much as I love Batman, I had to tell my LCS guys, like, look, I'm just doing Batman right now, and like Nightwing, like there's too much Batman.
Yeah,
there's too much Batman. I had 1 week alone where I had 7 different Batman comics for a week. Just 1 week. And it was like different iterations of Batman. I'm like,
too much.
I just got to take a tea. But, you know, what's funny is at the end of, so Doomsday Clock, right? Doomsday Clock was something that Jeff Johns wrote about 2.5 years ago. And that was another big DC crossover event that people aren't happy about. But it was bringing the Watchmen characters into the DC world on the multiverse. The end of the Doomsday Clock actually has the characters making reference to Marvel characters like Thor and Hulk.
Huh.
So that's always brewing there.
They're probably drinking, having a good time, talking stories across from the table with each other. They're all friends.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's the toxic fans that create the rivalry. They don't care. They're.
I just like good storylines.
Oh, I mean, gosh, I mean, like you look at someone like James Tynion, right? The comic book writer James Tynion. That dude, I've read stories of his from every comic publisher with the exception of Marvel. But like that dude can't miss with stories right now. You want some good stuff that he's writing too, like Nice House on the Lake is a DC comic. The Department of Truth. Listen, anyone that's listening out there, if you're not on the Department of Truth or you're not collecting the Department of Truth, do not be disappointed whenever it blows up, because I'm telling you, let me give you the 2-sentence backstory. The Department of Truth is a secret governmental agency that was created in the 60s, which is led by Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh, that's
Wow.
Yeah. Which you
Bubba,
queued
if
me up
you are
to
a
this.
conspiracy theorist, holy shit, you will not put this down.
okay. Well, I'll look at my store and see if my comic book store has
He'll
it.
be there tomorrow. If they were open after we got off, he'd be
Yeah.
there.
Well, I'm always looking for stuff that's hot because
Yeah.
everything turns into movies and stuff, and I'm always looking. And I just look. This is the greatest time in the world for me. It's always this is great. Like everything that I had when I was a kid, I can watch it now and actually be enjoyed, and I don't have to watch the Spider-Man from the 1970s, that the guy that beat up criminals, bank robbers and stuff. I can actually see good, enjoyable stories. Like Batman.
You know what the best part is, Bubba?
What's that?
All the money we got.
Yeah, but I mean, I like to me, Batman is, besides his not caring for his wards as good as he could, but since the DC stuff right now, and they've been slashing their comic books, like it is just a lot of Batman, and his family is supporting the whole DC comic universe.
Yeah.
So kind of to that point, let me ask you this, Max. Is this the movie that's gonna? I'm how do I phrase this? I pitched it to Cable last week. Like, is this the movie that's gonna save DC? To you, it's not saving anything because you're entrenched in it. But I guess maybe put it over into the more mainstream to where people are gonna go like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Like it's gonna compete with Marvel.
No,
or maybe that just doesn't need to be a thing. I don't know.
As much as I love the movie and think it's the best Batman that's been made, I think there's a lot of elements to this film that make it unapproachable for people. And I think it being 3 hours is incredibly unapproachable for people.
Or too violent? Do you think maybe the violence, the over the top violent scenes?
I don't think it was that bad.
Which
I don't think. I mean,
okay.
If people are enjoying like a Peacemaker type show, or they enjoyed James Gunn's Suicide Squad, or even like the Mortal Kombat movie that came out, I don't think the violence is what's going to turn people off.
But it's hard to take the little people.
That the attention span of people is just so diluted to this point that unless they're fully invested in something, 3 hours is a major commitment for individuals to make. And whether we like it or not, people don't consume media the way that they did before.
Right,
in fact, the numbers on Batman are probably going to be fantastic coming out of the box office, but I'm sure there's a number of people that have just gotten so used to consuming movies on HBO Max
and watch it at home,
and then they can
pause it and do whatever they need to do.
Sure.
But also, David, what about Batman is an iconic character, but that movie with the little people, like you couldn't take, if I had a son, or maybe it was somebody was like 8 or 9 or 10, I couldn't take them to go see Batman as I could go see Spider-Man.
No,
like that would be bad.
Right.
Yeah,
that's,
but I mean,
that's why I had to sneak out at night to go see it. With getting away with a little guy is tough anyway. But and he wanted to see it because Dad dressed up as Batman, as I sent to you guys, because he loves stuff. He loves the superheroes. He loves those kind of things, right? But he wasn't focusing on like learning things. So Dad dresses up as Batman and goes in his room and says, you need to learn your letters and learn to spell your name. And we joked about, I sent these guys a picture because I was Batman for Halloween way back when.
Nice.
I got the costume, I busted it out, I went in there and he did it. That's the thing. So now he has this thing with Batman, and he wanted to see Batman, but I couldn't take him to see that, so I get what you're saying, Bubba, but
so what would be a good Batman movie or something to show like Mav's son if he's interested in Batman, David?
Batman the animated series.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's the truth is that there's
Lego Batman.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways to experience the product without having to necessarily see the Batman that's out. I mean, I think, I don't know much about the Marvel universe, but my sense is like this Moon Knight show that's coming out is not going to be for kids either.
No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I'm sure there are certain either.
But it's Disney. But it's Disney Plus, and they're not going to go over the top anyway because it's Disney, and they're not going. You know what I mean? Maybe small kids probably can't see it.
I don't know. I mean,
he's a sick character. Like he's schizophrenic, isn't he, or bipolar?
Dissociative.
They're not
identity disorder.
Censoring any of the Netflix crossovers either on Disney Plus.
You have to get it on a thing.
I mean, like if they're going to show the Punishers unedited on Disney Plus, I can't imagine Moon Knight doing.
Well, you have to log into a certain thing. Like Disney right now actually kicked everybody off because I tried to get on before the show, and it actually kicked me off, and I have to re-log in now. Huh. So due to the fact, of the Netflix series,
you have to either set up a pin, you have to say you're okay with the mature and everything.
That's a good way around it.
Yeah,
because then they can put whatever they want on there. And to Bubba's point, and what you were saying, I love that they didn't gear this movie towards an easy audience.
Yeah.
Like they didn't make it friendly for children. To quote Michael Jordan from The Last Dance, F them kids.
I agree.
They're going after a mature audience because they realized a long time ago that comics aren't only for kids, and they don't treat comics that way now. You know, and I understand it's easy money to treat the movies that way, but they took so many artistic chances with this movie, and even the runtime, it being 3 hours long means less showings a day, less opportunity for money. And they went with that because that was what they thought was the best cut of the movie. So I applaud them wholeheartedly for that.
And I think in the long run, artistic integrity will always hold up and withstand the test of time than the quick cash grabs.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
I need to watch it once. I know when I watch it again, I'll have the same probably dynamics and attitude the three of you guys are having. I just know that. I mean,
Bubba let the movie-going experience get in the way of the actual movie.
Based on the Indiana County movie theater.
It was terrible. It looked like a homicide, like plastic everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who was spinning, who was riding the bike on the projector, got tired. He
said maybe it was meta. Maybe it was all meta. Maybe you were supposed to feel like you're in them.
That's why they don't have the 3-hour movies anymore, because those.
But I like it. But I like it. But I love.
Can't keep up.
I love.
Right?
Yeah. I love a 3-hour movie. Like Braveheart's one of my best movies ever, and the Avengers Endgame was the most. I was a kid who cried for 45 minutes and telling people before the movie to sit down and please shut the fuck up because I wanted to watch the movie. But that to me was I was more invested into that because of the 10 years of the culmination than I was vested in Batman. And I believe if I get a second opportunity, and I'll be more than happy to give an honest opinion. I just wish it was a little long. And I know, and once I see it on my TV, I'll be like, yeah, it's good. And I do like everything that DC brings in their movies and all their TV. I see everything. I like it all. Mm-hmm. I just like Marvel better.
Bubba, even if you don't, it's okay. It's okay to have a different
opinion. I have a different opinion. No, I'm okay with it.
But here's the best part of it, right? We're sitting here having a dialogue amongst each other, and you're going to talk to people that don't necessarily gravitate towards comic book movies, that if they talk to someone like myself or someone that's a Batman diehard, may have a better appreciation for the movie if they go back and watch it again. But at least people are talking about it, right?
Yeah. Well, you look at 30 years ago, conversations like this weren't being had about superhero movies. I mean, it's it's a wonderful time to be alive if you're into this subject matter. It really is.
Well, because it was, the idea of like comic book movies and everything was so divisive in the sense like comics are for nerds. That's it,
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now it's wow. There's a lot of identifiable stories and implications associated with these movies. A lot of people are consuming them and they're having conversations about them. So I think it's great. I mean, anything that brings any form of entertainment to the masses and gets them to take a little bit of a deeper dive on it, I'm all for. I mean, I think for DC, they're probably, starting to realize that their primary audience base is at the age where they don't need to gear things towards children.
Adults, yep.
Right? And I think Marvel, probably geared their stuff more towards kids because their audience was at the point where they were having kids. I mean, look, you talk about wrestling. I think we're going to see another iteration of the Attitude Era. We're just not there yet because
a little bit now, just a little bit.
It's because here's the thing. I don't have kids, but Gary, you have kids. You grew up on the Attitude Era, right?
I don't have any kids that I know about. If they do, they want college. If they're coming, they want college money.
We're not sure about Bubba. You know, Cable, you have coming. How old is Jeremy now? He's
12.
12. So yours is a little older. Mine's only 3, but
but there will come a point where, you know, they will make that transition to a little more mature content, and, you know, hopefully entertainment will be keeping pace with their age, you know, or there will be forms of entertainment.
Yeah, it's almost like they're growing up with it.
Yeah, my son Jeremy loved the Batman, and I didn't see that coming. I really didn't. I thought he was going to get bored, and it was going to be too slow for him. Because at 12, I mean, that's a short attention span, you know? Yeah. And he had a couple friends because we didn't see it till Sunday, the opening weekend on Sunday. Yeah. And he had a couple friends that he talked to that saw it and didn't like it, that were the same age as him. And he's like, throughout the movie, he's going, I don't know what they're talking about. This is so good. So, you know, it's awesome. And I was really pleased about that.
That's good that his friends didn't sway him. You know what I mean? That's good. He still stood his grounds like, hey, I like it because I like it. So that's good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. So Max, I have to ask you, what are some standout performances in this movie?
I mean, Paul Dano.
Yep.
I mean,
that's the first person that comes to my mind. Yep.
The thing is, like, Paul Dano is just such an incredible actor that when they announced him as the Riddler, you knew he was going to nail it. I mean,
you could see it right away.
Yep.
His performance in There Will Be Blood is just, every time I watch that movie, it's just incredible. So I think he did a really good job. I loved this version of Jim Gordon too.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Wright is always good in everything he does. Everything he does, he is such spot on.
Yeah.
Really did. And I think that Colin Farrell is the Penguin.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I'll be honest with you, I went into this movie pretty dark. Like most superhero movies, like especially with Marvel, I kind of know a little bit going into it, but I'll admit I wasn't overly excited about. I'm like, okay, another Batman, blah 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 blah. I didn't know Colin Farrell was going to be the Penguin. I had no idea. I didn't, and it was amazing. And I actually liked going into it dark because I didn't know, you know, the behind the scenes and this and that.
And
again, nostalgia hit me hard again. But
if I had to do one recast, someone that I did a great job, but like, to me, just didn't embody the characters I originally saw, it would be John Turturro as Carmine Falcone.
Okay.
I wanted a little bit more of a like a bigger, grittier, almost like a Tony Soprano, but darker. When I think of like Mob Boss,
like a Ray Liotta,
but that's almost like the Penguin in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. If you would have had two of those individuals, they probably would have blended together a little bit. But I don't know. Maybe it's because of the Big Lebowski and him being the Jesus, or him as Knish in Rounders. Like, I just look at him as kind of like a mid-level gambler who makes his life playing underground poker games. So
I always see the guy for the Transformers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
You know what's really cool too? Another thing I forgot to add that the movie adds in too, another homage to The Dark Knight Rises, is the twins that were the the door at the club. Just those subtle things too about, you know, because the twins were the characters that came in and poisoned the audience in The Dark Knight Rises when the Joker got out of prison. So I just thought it was cool to have those like little subtle details in there that true Batman fans would pick up on.
You could almost glean a little bit of No Man's Land from the ending also. Or
Cataclysm, yeah.
Yeah, you know, they could do that if they wanted to pick up right where this one left off with a sequel. They could adjust that to fit that.
Yep.
Well, and even with the map of Gotham that they showed at the end, you know, throwing it to like the Court of Owls and the Arkham and the Wayne family coming together as like Gotham's founding families.
Yes.
There's a lot they can develop there. But you're right. I mean, if you look at what happened after No Man's Land, you had the rise of all these rogues. You had the Penguin coming up. You had the Joker getting out of prison. So like, there's going to be a really cool opportunity. And I think what they're planning on doing is they're going to have a Penguin series on HBO Max.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have a GCPD series.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to have an Arkham series. So they're going to develop these characters or these secondary characters on HBO Max. And then when they come together in the movie, you're going to have a better understanding of who they are.
Yeah. Which is what I want. And what I'm talking about with Marvel and how they kind of tie things together.
Yeah.
And just, it's just good storytelling. And then in between movies, you get a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
It keeps people interested while the movies are getting developed.
Yeah.
Yep.
But also too, you guys know it's going to be this one sub world of Batman.
Mm-hmm.
So David, when do you think that he faces the Joker? 3 movies later? Because I wouldn't want to see it in the second or third. I want, it's going to be something it to make a story, set it up for.
Are you talking
later.
about Joaquin Phoenix's Joker?
No, I'm talking about the situation at the end of Batman.
the unforeseen Arkham prisoner.
Yes.
and let's put it this way. That was a question I was going to have too, in a way. So what do you think that Joker is going to be like? I personally think, just judging by the person that's playing the unforeseen Arkham prisoner, though I think it's going to be great. It's going to be a different take on the Joker. And I really think it's going to be awesome, but I'm just curious to see what your thoughts are.
You know, Bubba, I'm gonna come out and say I don't think there is going to be I don't think there's going to be a one-on-one square off between Batman and the Joker at any point in this arc. And the reason I say that is because if you look at how the Joker's character has developed over the years, the Joker really is the match that ignites the flame that Batman needs to put out. So there's been less direct contact between the Joker and Batman over the last, I'll say, 20 years in Batman comics, as opposed to the Joker putting people in place to orchestrate his grand plan.
He's the puppeteer.
And so what happens is the Joker ultimately always gives himself a little bit of a distance between the people that are actually committing the crimes and the overarching plan itself. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to see this Joker call together the rogues. And I think it's going to be Batman having to deal with individual problems themselves.
Okay.
But
I like that, though. I do like
never
that.
really, you never really can deal with the Joker, because the only way that you can get rid of the Joker is to kill him.
And he won't do that.
And so the thing is, what people also, I guess people probably understand it, but Batman is a love story, and the love story is between the Joker and Batman, because those two men love each other more than they love anything else in the world.
They can't exist. One can't exist without. Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think what they did by setting that up is it's not going to be a direct Joker character.
Confrontation. Okay.
Yeah. And the thing is too, that's smart, because if you look at how well the Joker did with the Joaquin Phoenix movie and what they're setting up with that universe or that sequel, why would you want to pair off a Joker in this world against arguably the best Joker in another world?
Okay. We've seen so many Jokers too. I mean, it's
right.
Yeah. And that worries me a little bit along this topic. I'm curious if you feel the same. I want to see more. I want sequels, but I'm worried if they do sequels, they go grander and lose the groundedness and the drawn out idea that this movie was, and they go a little bit more mainstream. Because Batman Begins has a little bit of a different feel than The Dark Knight does. Like, you can tell that they went for blockbuster with Dark Knight, and Dark Knight's amazing. It was my favorite until the Batman, but I don't want to see the same thing happen with the Batman 2. And so that worries me a little bit.
I think that given the fact that they stuck to their guns with a 3-hour movie and went as kind of hard as they did into the true detective story as Batman, something tells me that they're not going to just make a blockbuster for the sake of making a blockbuster. I mean,
true.
I think that, as you rebuild Gotham, there certainly is opportunity for larger catastrophes to take place. But I don't think that necessarily means they're going bigger for the sake of going bigger. I think it's how the story develops. But I mean, to be quite honest with you, I think a lot of people are starting to realize now, as we go through and kind of think about what scares us as a society, some of the most frightening things are what you can't see. And the reason why I like the Court of Owls story, and for everyone that's listening that doesn't kind of know what the Court of Owls are, they are the founding families of Gotham that operate in the shadows. They wear masks and you don't know who they are. They could be your neighbor. They could be your doctor, your lawyer. They could be the mayor. And so the idea psychologically of the fact that they built this city, they pull the, they have all the power, but no one knows who they are because they operate in the shadows, leads me to believe that that's the true villain that's going to be built up. And they already started to hint that a little bit with the renewal fund. They also started to hint at that with, talking about how Falcone was pulling the strings behind the scenes, and, some of the hints to the rebuilding of Gotham and the maps too. Because if you look at where Batman's lair is, that was another thing. So ties in Nightfall, because remember in Nightfall, Batman's coming in and out of the subway system. And I think that is ultimately how they will portray it, is that this, unknown, unseen villain that controls everything. It may have a really dark ending too.
But that's a good storyline that you just presented right there. Like that interests me right there.
Right. Because there is some possibility that that's what's going on in our world now.
I believe that.
That we have all these individuals that are controlling things from behind the scenes without us even knowing who they are. These power brokers that have all the money and all the power, and the figureheads that stand out there. And not to go down a conspiracy tangent, but it's terrifying to think that actually exists. And so what I think could happen with this movie too is, it could have a really disappointing and bleak ending, which is you're just left thinking Batman, either sacrificed himself or went through all this trouble, discovered that the largest enemy was hidden in the shadows, and there's really not much that can be done about it.
Ooh. And since Batman is not entwined in the DC universe, that is the ending that possibly could happen, which could be major because it doesn't affect anything else in the DC universe.
Right. And I mean,
wow. Okay.
When fundamentally, when your whole, when everything around you is built on the idea of not killing anyone because you just, turn into the criminal, it's almost impossible to ever end a human threat, right? Because that will always permeate. So there's a little bit of it's a little self-defeating prophecy, right? Yeah. Because as much as you continue to fight the good fight and try to do what's right, there's always some evil that's creeping up. And then the question becomes, is that evil a byproduct of the fact that Batman's out there doing this?
Yes.
Or is it because evil just exists?
Right. Yeah, because that's going to create escalation, which has been explained to us in
very
the Dark
deep,
Knight and everything. Yeah.
Right.
And once you get that ball rolling, you can't get the toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak. And Batman, just like he said at the beginning of the movie, which, you have the Bat family and everything, but he's only one man. And Gotham is a large city. And once that snowball starts rolling, how is he supposed to be able to do anything about it? Like you said, especially because there's no finite ending. He doesn't kill anybody. He doesn't, there's no resolution other than to just lock him up again.
Well, and I mean, it's a, it parallels our universe, right? Because we're never really out of conflict. Conflict is what continues to make our world go around. And if we, hopefully reach a time where we get to that utilitarian society where there's peace and harmony, I think people would think it's kind of boring. But, conflict is what drives all of our storytelling. So it is a little self-defeating, but it's the natural ending to the Batman comics. I mean,
and as a big Batman fan, and Mark, as you are, would that be a fulfilling ending for you? Because I feel for people like on the outside looking in, they don't understand the backstory of Batman at all, or the psychology of it, they would complain and moan and wouldn't get it. right?
I would have said about 10 years ago, I would have been very disappointed. But I think in today's day and age where everything has kind of a 360 experience, and by that I mean where, you can use the internet and you can use apps and you can use your phone and you can use social media to tie all this in. I think there are going to be some people that are really going to like the idea of doing their own digging, going back and learning the history of Batman, the character, and creating their own endings. Right? What would happen next? Who would come next? Is there new characters? What happens with Batman in this world? And I think that a lot of that stems from the popularity of mystery, murder mystery, and detective shows. People like to play amateur sleuth. They like to sit there and watch a show like Making a Murderer and then think, well, did he do it or didn't he? What can I go back and look at the evidence and see if they missed anything? So I don't think in today's day and age it's going to be bad. I think it's going to be good. In fact, I think it's somewhat I think it turns people off if you come right out and give them everything that they want.
Okay.
Because there's no yearning at that point.
Right. Yeah, whether they realize it or not. Yeah.
So I got two more questions before we move on to a different subject here.
Sure.
Grade Robert Pattinson's performance in this. What do you think? Well, first, just answer that question.
I'm going to say, as an actor, I'm going to give him an A.
Okay. So where is he in the lineup of the best Batman of all time?
It's really hard to answer that question, Gary, because, and the reason I say this is because the Batman that he was asked to portray was different than any Batman that's been portrayed in movies.
Okay, so let me rephrase that. Which is your favorite?
Batman?
Yeah.
The Batman.
The Batman. No, I mean as in the actor that played him. Batman.
This is your number one Batman. This is your number one Batman of all the
Batman. Okay. Because here's the thing. Christian Bale was a great Batman.
Yeah,
I would probably put him
probably
at
my favorite too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he was a very good blend of realism but superhero. Sex appeal as a Bruce Wayne and the Bachelor Playboy, badass as the Batman in the suit. I think Robert Pattinson as an actor is just as talented as Christian Bale and could have filled that role. But the character itself of Bruce Wayne was such a despondent being because the way they set him up, he doesn't even want to put on a public facade as Bruce Wayne. He just wants to be the Batman. And so could you say that his performance as Bruce Wayne was lackluster, that it was low energy? Well, absolutely. But that's the way it was designed. So to compare these Batmen, it's really hard. That'd be like saying, do you like Hollywood Hogan versus, say your prayers and eat your vitamins Hogan? They're two different characters, but it's the same person.
Yeah.
You're right.
I get it. I guess it's just like, what do you prefer at this point? So that's kind of where I was going with that.
I look at like, it's easier to answer that question with a character like James Bond, right? Because Bond's character is the same throughout all those movies. It's just you have a different flesh and bone portraying him, right? But this Batman was completely different than the others. So my favorite, I would say Pattinson, just because I was just so blown away with how they did that character throughout the movie.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a great answer.
I agree with that.
This movie has struck a chord with you, and being a big Batman enthusiast as you are, this last movie has toppled everything you've actually seen in your entire life until recently, and that makes this Batman, watching or going to see it again, something for what you said, because you are a big Batman fan. That's a big thing. It's a major bold statement to make, seeing this new movie and putting that on top as the top of Batmans of all time.
And sometimes it's about education for people. And, I think all of us learned a lot just from you talking about this. So when you go back, Bubba, to watch it at some point, I'm curious.
Well, I want to do this owl, the Court of Owls. I'm very interested in that. And I knew about that. And I don't need to add any more comic books to my collection, or I'm going to have to go get another friggin' job. But I do like reading graphic Batman novels, and maybe I'll go to that extent because Ollie's does have some stuff. So, but I want to be knowledgeable is the best. Being knowledgeable is the best, key to have. I am not as knowledgeable as the Batman as I am in other stuff in the Marvel lore. I could okay. But I do like the Batman from the mid 80s up to the mid 90s, when he broke his back and stuff like that. I have all that.
Yeah.
But, I am older and it's hard to remember a lot of the stories. But I will give this, it's not because whatever. I know my two comrades are pro of this movie, and I had a bad situation of watching the movie, and I want to give it another go. I want to see the Justice League again, but I keep missing pieces of that too. I have to rewatch that too because it's so long.
Yep. Because
I'm not invested in DC as I am in Marvel. Like Marvel, I'll watch 10 hours of Marvel and not miss a trick. So but I appreciate what the knowledge that you brought, David, to me. That I want to, I just love the stuff anyway. I do love Batman. I've seen every Batman movie in every movie theater.
Yeah.
It's just not my. I think it did make my top 5 though. I think
one other Batman story that I'll say was incorporated in this as well, which was another take on Batman. They did a storyline called Batman the White Knight. And the concept there is the Joker actually takes medication that makes him sane. And he runs for mayor and he gets elected mayor of Gotham. And he actually gets Batman locked away because he creates this idea that the city had a separate Batman fund set up, which anytime Batman wreaked havoc on a neighborhood because of him driving the Batmobile through or foiling someone's plan, they had this slush fund that would go to rebuild that area. But the Waynes were controlling it as well. So he was able to turn the entire city against Batman and make him the villain.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I wasn't privy to that either.
I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this story that I think Matt Reeves just expertly blended together.
Killed it. Yeah.
For to make it 3 hours. I mean, you could make it 10 hours just to talk about some of the stuff that we've got.
Well, we probably could talk to you for 10 hours about a lot of things. And
we're good at that.
I know you're good with you're a big Power Ranger mark. And I believe also Ninja Turtles.
Huge Ninja Turtles.
So you're a man of my own heart. But I have one final question before we wrap up Batman and DC before we move on to another subject.
Yeah.
For the three of us being more Marvel fans, give us a summary, cut us a promo, and tell us why DC is better than Marvel. In any form you want. It doesn't have to be a promo, but
convince us.
If you want to look at beautiful art
Okay.
and dynamic characters that will make you think about the world around you and think about your own self, you'll read DC. If you want to get out of this world and see colorful characters that go to different universes and kill ghouls and aliens, Marvel's your jam.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that.
Nope.